I did my Evolution in the News project on bush warbler genetic variety in Hawaii. The article I chose was titled Genetic Drift Caught in Action in Invasive Birds, and I found this article on Science Daily. The Japanese bush warblers were artificially introduced to Hawaii by humans. They were first introduced in Oahu. Throughout the remainder of the 20th century, the birds did migrate to the other surrounding Hawaiian islands, and they do now inhabit all of the Hawaiian islands. Researchers at Northern Arizona University discovered that the bush warbler on Oahu have the greatest genetic variation. They also uncovered some unique genetic diversity that was only found in the birds of Kauai. So the research article attached to the pop culture article was titled Population Genetics of an Island Invasion by Japanese Bush Warblers in Hawaii, USA. This was published by the American Ornithological Society Publications Office. Research was led by Jeffrey Foster, and he and his team discovered that the genetic diversity among the bush warblers is the highest on the island of Oahu, and the genetic diversity is lower in the neighboring islands. They also discovered that the bush warbler in Kauai are genetically diverging from the neighboring populations. This is just some background information about the birds. The Japanese bush warblers were introduced to Oahu by Hui Manu in 1929. This was a bird naturalization club, and their goal was really to release songbirds into Hawaii. The warbler then colonized itself on the neighboring islands surrounding Oahu. They started with the island of Molokai in 1979 and ended with the big Hawaiian island in 1997. The reproductive traits of the Japanese bush warbler have contributed to its rapid dispersal and variety. The Japanese bush warbler breed in their second year, and they also have a relatively short gestation period. Between 2003 to 2005, researchers collected 147 bush warblers from habitats across the Hawaiian Islands. But 4 of those birds were not actually used in the sample, leaving 143 birds to test. And just with those 4 birds, it was determined they were too closely related to be used. Tissue samples were taken from the pectoral muscle, and whole blood samples were also taken and tested. Researchers used microsatellite markers to analyze the DNA. The 12 microsatellite markers were amplified using polymerase chain reaction. They measured the diversity by looking at the number of alleles and heterozygosity. These were then compared among the samples. They also analyzed mitochondrial DNA. They did that to try to trace a potential origin of the bird. And they did find similarities with Japanese populations of bush warblers. The 2 hypotheses that researchers were testing with this experiment was first that the greatest genetic diversity would be found among the Oahu population, and the second was that there was a founder effect happening on the Kauai population. The researchers' hypotheses were confirmed. The highest genetic diversity was found on the island of Oahu, which was the initial introduction point of the bush warblers. As the birds migrated to other islands, the genetic diversity decreased. There were differences in genes between birds on each island, but overall, genetic makeup didn't show huge changes. But the researchers did also discover that the birds on Kauai are genetically different from the birds on other islands. They attributed this difference to be due to how far apart that island is from the other Hawaiian islands. This study contributes to our understanding of evolutionary processes in island ecosystems. Understanding genetic diversity in island populations is really crucial for conservation efforts. the image over here, this is just like a plot diagram of the relatedness of the birds that they tested. And you can see down here the Kauai population, and then the difference between the Oahu population, and just how the article was extremely short in comparison to the research article, but the gist of the article was pretty spot on. The pop culture article did discuss the genetic diversity of the Oahu birds and the genetic difference of the Kauai birds. And they did also mention that researchers used blood and muscle samples. However, the article didn't go into much detail about the method that was used. I think the article portrayed the scientist, his name was Jeffrey Foster, in a pretty positive light. They included some words from him at the end, and towards the end he does talk about how he chose this topic, and one of the things that he noticed about these birds and what drew him to the birds was that they have this loud song. And he also closed in his statement, he mentioned that there were many questions that he did not get to answer about the bush warblers. One of those questions was, why did it take them 50 years to colonize other islands after being introduced to Oahu? And how the vocalizations of these birds have changed as they've colonized these new islands. Overall, I think the Science Daily article was not particularly attractive in the title. What really caught my attention was when I was scrolling through the articles, this little blurb, this little summary right here. So this course has really had me thinking quite a lot about the human impact on evolution. Humans are responsible for a massive loss of habitat, global warming, and damages to the soil and water just through our use of pesticides and fertilizers. So I was really interested in learning about how humans have impacted the evolution of this bird species. So what really got my attention was that last line right there, where in the summary they talk about how these birds were introduced through unnatural means, which is humans. These are just my references. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I will answer them. Thank you.